Good morning, YouTube. What is happening? Today, we're going to be talking about time lapses. Let's go. Well folks, what is a time-lapse? Well, according to Wikipedia, time-lapse photography is a technique in which the frequency at which film frames are captured is much lower than the frequency used to view the sequence. When played at normal speed, time appears to be moving faster and thus lapsing. In layman's terms, it's lots of photos spread over a long period of time with usually larger intervals than normal. So you have basically half an hour of, or 10 minutes of a time chopped into like a 10-second clip. For example, cityscapes or mountains with clouds, or lots of people, hustle and bustle, moving rapid, that sort of stuff. Those clips are in, I got those clips from ArtGrid. ArtGrid is, let's try and get some decent framing, shall we? I'm using the 1DX, so I can't actually see myself, but I just had a look back and I was miles off, so I'm just going to hold you by the lens. Don't have a flip out screen, which is good. So yeah, those clips are from ArtGrid. This is not sponsored by ArtGrid, but ArtGrid is a stock website to get footage, time lapses. I think you can get LUTs on there, but don't quote me. And I won the competition, like I said in a previous video up here, one of those previous videos. I won ArtGrid competition on Instagram and got a year subscription, so thought I would utilise it for this. Yeah, have a gander below. I've linked ArtGrid. It's a pretty good website, along with Artlist. So yeah, today we're talking time lapses. I'm going to go through a couple of different methods on the R5. I would say there's probably 3 methods of doing it. 2 true methods of time lapse, and then there's a third one that I'll talk about but not actually do. So what I'm going to do is just going to set up my tripod, and then we'll go through the settings on the R5. So let's do that now. Oh, I hope I'm in focus. Well, if I'm not, I'm not. Sorry about that. And the audio. I'm using a shotgun mic, which in the previous video, which I'll link up here maybe. Previous video I mentioned that I usually use the Rode, but I thought I would have a gander at the shotgun mic and see what the audio is like. Just test and adjust. Seems to work for everybody else, so thought I might just try it. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so the previous method that you literally just saw looks like a time lapse, but it's just video sped up. Now, I've only ever really seen that a couple of times from Casey Neistat. He was pretty much like the king of time lapses way back when, during his vlogs, because it gives you a chance to see something that looks like a time lapse. For example, he had cranes in the city in New York, or boats along Manhattan, the river, Hudson River, that's what I'm looking for. And then at a split second you can stop the video and play it at normal time, so that you don't necessarily miss the moment. Whereas if you did a time lapse and then also wanted to shoot video, you would probably miss a brief moment that you might not necessarily want to miss, and it would almost look like a jump cut. So that's when I've seen video used. Also, Peter Lindgren, I hope I'm not butchering your name, apologise Pete, but yeah, he also uses his in time lapses, but I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, he uses S&Q mode, time lapse mode on his Sony rather than doing a video, but I don't know. Pete, if you ever see this, comment below. I've only got 300 subscribers, so you're probably never going to see this, but if you do, have a gander. So yes, we're going to move on to settings now. There's two different types of ways of doing it on the R5, and we'll just head into that now, and I'll explain them both. So as you can see, I'm filming the back of the R5 at the moment. Ideally, with a time lapse, you need to have movement within the scene. Now, it was raining about 10 minutes ago, so I was hoping that there'd be some clouds at the top of the Recon. However, as you can see, there are no clouds at the top of the Recon. So we're just going to go through the motions, and you never know, you might get a cloud go past at some point. We'll see, but you can also see traffic going past in the background. Now, if you were filming traffic, for example, or people moving, ideally you would want to choose an exposure where the shutter's open for not quite a while, but more than normal, to not freeze the motion and to blur the subject. For example, putting it onto a 30th of a second like I've got here, and I've got it on F11 to make sure that the Recon, if I zoom in, make sure that the Recon spike is sharp, and then I've just basically balanced out the exposure with the ISO and shutter speed. As you can see, you've got traffic going past as well, so let's have a gander. So in the menus then, what we're going to do is no, definitely don't want to format a card, is we're going to go to, if it's going to let me, I'll just do it with my fingers, excuse fingers. So we're going to go to interval timer. Now this interval timer, enable, is like the old school mode if you were using a physical intervalometer and plugging it into the side of the camera. That's how I've done it. That's how I used to do it with my Nikons before. Not with my Sony because I had it built in, but with Nikon I had a plug-in intervalometer, and what that does is takes incremental pictures, like so. Bear with me. So go into, oh great, go into the mode. Okay, enable, come on, it's because I'm trying not to use my fingers. Okay, great, that car's wow loud. That's why I came here, because it's not very loud with the traffic. So I'm going to go into interval mode, and we're going to go to info. Now, intervals is how long between each shot you're going to have. So if you've got something over a long space of time, for example, a sunset or an astro time lapse, and you might want in between the stills, you want a larger interval. For example, if you were doing 20-second photos, you wouldn't want a 5-second interval, because it doesn't give enough time for the full exposure before you then move on to the next one. Or if something was moving very, very slowly, you won't want one photo every 2 seconds, because it just won't show much movement. So then you basically have, you choose one frame every 30 seconds, for example. But just for this, we're going to go one photo every 5 seconds and only 30 shots. Just to show this as an example, and then we'll move on to the example that example number 3, basically, which will go into a bit more detail. So press OK, and then I'm going to press the shutter to get back to the start. Now you can see up there that it says timer 30 shots. I'm just going to press the shutter button, as in the photo shutter button, and it's just going to count down, as you can see. I'm just going to speed this up so that you can see the end. So as you can see there, it's finished, and what happens is, not that you'll be able to notice it I don't think, but if you look in the top left hand corner, I'm going through each image. Now this mode, taking each individual image, I would say is the best method if you are going to do something where you need to draw a lot of details or a lot of colours out of the image. So for example, if you're doing a time lapse, you can take each individual single photo, bring it into Lightroom or into Camera Raw or whatever the program that you're using, and then you individually edit each photo, or if they're all at the same scene and they're all fairly similar colour, you could edit one photo and then do sync all to get them all. But if you're doing day to nighttime, for example, time lapse, or nighttime to daytime, that's probably not going to work because of unless you're doing basic techniques with clarity or something, then syncing all is probably not going to work. But basically, this mode in photo mode is to have individual images to be able to do more control over the raw image. Now, moving on to the next mode. So I'm going to disable that. Disable. Now I'm going to switch to photo mode, and it's not going to be in the right exposure. Good. Okay, let's move to that. Let's move to let's keep it on that exposure. Let's go to F, back to F11. It's a bit dark, not gonna lie. Let's go up. I'm in face tracking mode. So, one point to know with time lapses, okay, especially with video mode, is to turn off autofocus, and as I'm on a tripod, it's already off at the moment, but turn off stabilization. That sounds a bit counterintuitive, but if your camera, your lens is on a tripod, it's already being stabilized. What does in-body stabilization and the the lens stabilization is going to try and stabilize the whole thing, and it's just not going to work. And you need to have as still as possible with a time lapse, so you don't get any movement other than the movement around the subject. Anyway, back on track. So let's go to, I think it is, there we go, look, time lapse. Turn you that time lapse movie mode. So this is in video mode. Enable. Very similar menu. So let's do 4 seconds. Press OK. Number of shots. Okay. I didn't go into this in the previous one because I wanted to have it a bit more detail. So in video mode, or in the other mode as well. The other mode you're going to have to work it out, but this mode, it kind of shows you anyway. So if you're doing a video that is 25 frames a second, for example, if you're doing 25 frames a second, that means you're having 25 pictures, 25 stills, 25 frames in 1 second. So that previous video that I just did with 30 frames, even if it's 5-second intervals, it doesn't really matter about the 5-second intervals, is going to be just over a second of footage. Or if you're in America doing 30 frames a second, for example, that's just 1 second of footage. So you shot 5-second intervals, 30 pictures, and a total of 30 times 5 off the top of my head is 150 seconds. 150 seconds to get 1 second of actual footage. So that's what you need to work out. So for example, let's just do a simple bit of maths. If I want 25 frames a second, and that's going to be a 10-second clip. If I go back up there, so 5 seconds, as it says there, look, I'm going to shoot for 25 minutes and 45 seconds, total of 250 shots, and it's going to be a 10-second clip, so bear that in mind. Now on here, this mode, you can have full HD, 4K or 8K. In the previous mode, that would depend if you're shooting RAW or JPEG of how big the images would be. Obviously RAW images are going to be massive, they're going to take up loads of room. So for this, just for an example, I'm going to do an 8K time lapse, and then I can show you the benefits of an 8K time lapse. For example, punching in and using multiple parts of the scene in one exposure. So even though I'm getting a 10-second clip, I could use 10 seconds of the bottom right, top left, depending on the scene. If you're in a cityscape, then you can, you know what I mean, you can use various different parts of like cranes or people moving, and just from one clip. So auto exposure, I've got it in manual mode at the moment, so everything's full manual. You could use, if you're doing like a sunset for example, you could use aperture priority, which would, if you wanted to keep a certain depth of field or the most amount of light for Astro or something like that, then you can use aperture priority, and then everything else would change so that it's not too jittery doing a day to night for example. Auto exposure first, just the first frame. I don't really know what that does, not gonna lie. Comment below if you know what that means. Auto exposure for the first fixed frame, don't know. But let's go back. Now what you're gonna do is do a test shot for the first one, just to see what it looks like. Hardly see. So as it says here, look, so that's a test shot. Test and set exposure settings on this screen. Fully press to take another test shot, or if you're ready, press the record button and it will crack on. Okay, so I'm going to adjust exposure slightly, only slightly, not even a small, just under a stop. Got a little bit of clouds forming, but not much. I might zoom out slightly. There we go. Zoom out slightly. You definitely don't want face tracking on. Turn that spot on. Let's zoom in. Make sure that we're all zoomed in nice. See if we can see anybody up there. Anybody up there? Don't think so. Oh, there might be. I think you might be able to see some people up there. Don't know. Everything seems pretty sharp. That might be someone. I think it is somebody. Look at that. That's pretty cool. That's 200mm as well. If I went to 400mm, which I'm not going to, but I reckon you'll be able to notice it. But that's pretty cool. So, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to press the record button, and then I'm going to make a brew. There we have a nice brew, good to go. So I like black coffee, no sugar, no milk. Ooh, that is good. Good tabs. And there we have the last image. Bosh. 250. Oh, cheers. I hope you can't hear that chainsaw. What a pain. So the last image going down. 250 images gone. Now, good thing about the video mode is the fact that you can review it straight afterwards. So just in case you've been waiting for 20 minutes like I have, and it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to, you could obviously reposition it, move it, and have a gander afterwards. But let's have a look and see what it looks like now. Now, as you can see, there was some movement in the clouds, but there's nowhere near enough contrast. Now, I take my kids to school and see the Wrekin quite often, and the amount of times I've seen the clouds there, and I'm like, oh god, I wish I could have a time lapse. You can just see it just peeking through, wispy clouds, bit of not frost, bit of mist. Yeah. And I'm never there with the camera. So hopefully in the future, as you'll see, like, subscribe, I'll get on a decent time lapse of the fog and the mist and stuff rolling over. That'll be quality. I did do this hyperlapse, as you can see here, with my drone, but as I said, that's a hyperlapse, which is different. So a time lapse at the moment is I'm stood still and everything else is moving, and a hyperlapse is when the camera is moving and the subject's moving as well. This instance, I was with my drone in Wales capturing sunrise. Still one of my favourite clips that I've got, so yeah, that's quality. So anyway, where were we? So yes, anyway, that is the time lapse using the video mode. Bear with me and I will turn you around. So yes, welcome back. That was video mode time lapse within the R5, and just to summarise, we've used video mode, the time lapse interval in the photo mode, that's through the individual pictures if you wanted a bit more finessing and using raw images. Excuse me. And then, like you saw at the start when I'm making a brew and stuff like that, I use it's not time-lapse mode officially, but it's a video sped up to look like time-lapse mode, and we went through that of why there would be a good reason, jeez, get my words out, why that would be a good reason to use that. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Bit of a short, sharp one. I do love a good time lapse, but as I said, don't usually have the time to do a time lapse. If I'm ever filming something, I've only got a couple of hours to film, and yeah, the struggle is real. But got today off work, so thought I would make the most of it, and I was hoping the clouds would be a bit better because it was raining earlier, but wasn't to be. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Comment below if you've ever done a time lapse. You do actually have time-lapse mode on your phones, so get out there, do a nice time-lapse of the clouds, do a time-lapse of anything, do a time-lapse of you making a brew, do a time-lapse of your kids running around the house, do a time-lapse of cars. I would love you guys to do a time-lapse on your phone, doesn't matter what it's on. Hit me up on Instagram here and tag me. That'd be a cool thing. Not so much of a challenge, but a bit of community engagement. So yeah, let's do that. So my challenge to you is to do a time lapse of anything within reason. So yeah, do a time lapse. Keep it clean. I don't want anything random. But yeah, do a time lapse of doing something. Tag me on Instagram. And I look forward to that, and I'll share them on my stories. So hope you enjoyed this one. Like, subscribe, follow, all that cool stuff. And hopefully I'll get on and do some more time lapses, but look forward to future videos where I might talk about hyperlapses on a tripod, and then I'll do another video as well about hyperlapses with my drone. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this one. As I said, like, subscribe, follow, all the cool stuff. I shall catch you in the next one. Peace out.